Hello and welcome to the new second season 1.5. I don't think it's fair to call it a second season.
Yeah, season 1.5.
Yeah, it's how TV shows do like 13 seasons and then they stop, or 13 episodes and then they stop and then they continue on with the first season. It's like that.
Except now in radio form.
Episode 13, funnily enough,
nice,
of the Comic Book Club. I'm your host, Matt Lasik.
I'm your host, Kendra Forte.
And we're just vibing today. I know previously we said when we come back we'd do Watchmen, but we're not finished dealing with it yet because it's a lot.
There are so many words in Watchmen.
There are a lot of words in Watchmen, so we're gonna do that next week. We might do some background stuff today if we want to get into it. But what I primarily want to do, because it's been a while. Hi, listeners. It's me, Matt Lasik from the podcast, and it's been a while since we've talked. So I just wanted to take a bit to sort of talk about what's going on in comics recently, because there's been a lot of big stuff happening over the winter since our last episode. So let's just chat. Kendra, do you want to talk about Marvel or DC first? What are you feeling?
Marvel.
Okay, so currently happening in Marvel Comics is a big event called King in Black, and it's all Venom based. So, how much do you know about Venom, Kendra?
The basics. I saw like 75% of the movie, so I would call myself an expert.
Okay, well, the movie isn't even a very accurate representation of the character.
I just know so much.
Yeah, she's our own little homegrown expert, folks. So let's talk about Venom, because to understand King in Black, you need to understand Venom. And Venom is one of those characters where they just keep changing his backstory. Like, they just keep changing it every couple of years. They just decide to retcon something. So let's talk about that. The first appearance of... Okay, so now we need to... I can't even say the first appearance of Venom, because that's a whole other thing. So, in the 80s, I'm going to pull up the exact date because I like being accurate. From 84 to 85, Marvel had a big crossover event called Marvel Superheroes: Secret Wars. Or as it's just known by most people, Secret Wars. And this was like one of Marvel's first forays into big crossover events. And the plot of this is that an alien, a godlike alien being known as the Beyonder, kidnapped a bunch of heroes and villains from Earth. I was going to say the Marvel Universe, but it's just Earth because like 90% of comics things happen on Earth. The Beyonder kidnapped a bunch of heroes and villains from Earth and put them on like an artificial planet called Battleworld and said, hey, fight each other. And if you win, I'll grant you a wish.
Go crazy, folks. Go stupid.
Go crazy, go stupid. So they did. A lot of fighting happened. A lot of emotions happened. And in the process, Spider-Man's iconic red and blue outfit got torn up. So he's walking around like showing skin in like the hero's base. And he walks past Thor, who had also been reduced to near nudity in an earlier issue, but Thor's got a shiny new costume on. So Spider-Man says, hey Thor, where'd you get that new costume? And Thor says, verily, or something like that. There's a machine over in that room that'll give you a new costume. And Spider-Man says, cool. So it goes into the room, but Thor didn't tell him which machine. So he just sits out at some random machine and it spits out like a black orb, and then the orb crawls over his body and turns into a new Spider-Man suit.
Close enough.
So the event continues and finishes, and the heroes and villains all get sent back to Earth. But Spider-Man has a cool new outfit. It's like all black and sleek, and it has organic webbing, so he never like has to run out and change his wrist ammo. It can like turn itself into street clothes. But it's also making him more aggressive and like kind of a jerk. See Spider-Man 3 starring Tobey Maguire if you want like a film representation of this. So eventually Spider-Man's like, geez, this isn't cool. This isn't epic. I don't like this anymore. Get this thing off of me. So then he, at the same time that this is happening, there's a character that was introduced named Eddie Brock. and he was a reporter at, I think, the Daily Star, which was a competitor to the Daily Bugle, where Peter Parker worked. And Brock had this whole expose planned out for a villain known as the Sin Eater, and he published it. But turns out he accused the wrong person of being Sin Eater. So he was like he ended up being like a big public laughingstock because Spider-Man like revealed like, wait a minute, Edward, you got the wrong person. So now Eddie Brock hates Spider-Man, and he has cancer, so he goes to this church and is like praying at the altar. Meanwhile, in the same church, Spider-Man's trying to get this parasitic suit off of him, so he goes to the bell tower because he discovered that the organic suit doesn't like sonics. So he goes to the bell tower and like smacks the bell and like it rings really loud and it goes off of his body. Again, see Spider-Man 3 for more details. Don't see it. It's not a good movie. So he gets the suit off of him and then he just kind of passes out in the bell tower. And the remnants of the suit sort of drip down through the ceiling and find their way onto Eddie Brock, who's been praying at the altar the whole time. And
what a gift from God. What a gift.
And the suit bonds with Brock. And Brock's like, I hate Spider-Man. And the suit's like, no way, I hate Spider-Man. And Brock's like, no way. So then through the sort of leftover genetic memories of Spider-Man, combined with Brock's natural athleticism, the suit turns the two of them into this like beefed up evil Spider-Man with like giant teeth and a giant tongue and stuff. And he calls himself Venom because some spiders are venomous. Get it?
Close enough.
Close enough. And then, he'd go on to fight Spider-Man a whole bunch of times. The interesting part about Venom, because recently they've really made him out to be like a hero, but he hasn't always been that way. The interesting thing about Venom is that he's always believed himself to be a good guy, or at least Eddie Brock has always considered himself to be a good guy and Spider-Man to be a bad guy. So Eddie Brock as Venom has never like targeted innocents. He's always just tried to kill Spider-Man because of like he believes that Spider-Man ruined his life or whatever.
You should have accused the wrong guy, Eddie Brock. I don't know what to tell you.
That's on you, bud. Over the years, the Venom symbiote would find multiple other hosts, including Mac Gargan, a.k.a. the Scorpion, and Flash Thompson, who, if you...
Oh, that one kid.
Yeah, if you've watched any Spider-Man movie, or listened to our third ever episode, pardon me, then you would know that Flash Thompson is most famous for being Spider-Man's high school bully. And then he turned out to be, in my opinion, the best Venom. Because he was really cool. Because he was in the 60s when Spider-Man graduated from high school, Flash went to the same college as him. And then after a bit, he ended up enlisting in the army and going to, I think, Vietnam. It doesn't matter which war because Marvel has like a sliding time scale. So they'll just...
It was whatever war
fits. Marvel wants it to be in. And he ended up getting his legs blown off while in the process of saving other soldiers. So then he comes back from the war and he's like lost his legs and ended up becoming Pete's best friend and roommate, and it's like really cool and touching. And then eventually in like I think the 2010s, the army got their hands on the Venom symbiote and they were like, "Hey Flash, you want to become Venom?" And he's like, "Hell yeah." So then he becomes Agent Venom, and it's really cool. And I really like Flash Thompson as Agent Venom. During the run with Flash Thompson as Venom, he actually discovers that...
Does he get new legs as Venom?
Yes, Venom makes legs for him.
Oh, that's nice.
But it's only when he's wearing the suit, because they're like Venom
I would
legs.
just never take the suit off.
You can't see it by a shrug. Anytime there's I gotta learn to stop shrugging while I'm on air, because it's not something that's communicated very well via audio. During the run with Venom with Flash as Venom, he discovers that the Venom symbiote is a member of the Klyntar, which is spelled like Klyntar or something. And it's the twist is like, oh, you thought the Klyntar were like all parasites, but actually only like this one Klyntar was a parasite. All the other ones are like cool.
All the other ones are chill.
Basically, all the other Klyntar.
This one's a jerk.
All the other Klyntar like team up with warrior races and basically become space cops. So there's a run of the Venom comics that's titled Venom Space Knight, and it's Flash Thompson running around in space, being like a space knight, and it's really cool. So that's like the first recent major change in the backstory. Is like, oh, actually, the Klyntar aren't parasites; they're like cool space cops. Isn't that cool?
Space cops.
Eventually, Flash Thompson would lose the Venom symbiote and it would go back to Eddie Brock. And this was in, I want to say like the past 5 years, Marvel has really put a lot of effort into redeeming Eddie Brock and making him a hero. So like, they gave him a kid. He has a son now.
How has he not died of cancer yet?
Because the symbiote ate it.
Okay.
That's part of why they had like a symbiotic relationship, is because the symbiote ate his cancer.
Cool. Dope.
Yeah, Venom's
Sick.
got a weird amount of lore. Speaking of weird Venom lore, a very recent change is that first you thought they were parasites, but then they were actually space knights. But then instead of being space knights, it turns out that the Clintar were once the children / servants of a space god called Null, spelled Knull. And when he was defeated, they were instead, all of the Clintar were merged into a planet, and the planet worked as a cage for Null. And then from there, they went on to become space knights. So they just keep changing stuff.
They just left Null to float in space?
Well, no,
like,
he's inside the planet, and all of his former like children / servants are his prison. It's like a big goop ball, and in the middle of the hard candy center of the goop ball is an unbeatable god of darkness.
I thought they left to become space cops. They not actually
That was after they became a planet, I think.
So they became a planet and trapped this guy, and then they left the planet.
Okay,
so what happened to the guy in the middle?
So first, at the beginning of the universe, there was only Null, because he's the god of darkness, so it was all dark. And then the god of light came in, who hasn't been revealed yet, and beat Null, and Null. So in the fight between light and dark, Null spawned the Clintar, who in their natural forms were like big goop dragons. So then he had an army of goop dragons to fight against the god of light, but the god of light beat him, and I think they turned the goop dragons into a planet with Null in the center of the planet.
Cool. The question is, after they were done being a planet, where did Null go?
He's still in there, or he was still in there. That's okay. So, fast forward to modern times, several millennia in the future.
Just skip all the unimportant parts.
Of them being space cops.
Yeah.
Yeah, so then Eddie Brock finds one of the goop dragons on Earth that was like frozen in ice or something, and he fights it, and he ends up killing it.
Rude.
But doing that awakens Null. So then for like a solid year or two, it was just like a constant thing in Marvel Comics of like, oh yeah, Null's on his way to like destroy Earth, and he can't be stopped. So it would just be like every couple of issues, like one of the space characters would be like, oh yeah, by the way, all of these planets died because Null's just going on a straight line from Clintar to Earth.
Oh yeah, Null's coming. By the way.
Just by the by. So the current event, King in Black, Null has arrived on Earth with his goop dragons, and he's taken over, and it's not great. Because he's basically just beating up everyone. I should mention that during all of this, Eddie's been going on adventures with his son, Dylan, who Eddie first thought was his brother, but then it turned out to be his son, actually.
How do you get that confused?
So there was a character in the Venom lore who was Eddie's wife for a bit, and then ex-wife. And Dylan is the son of Eddie and that woman. I can't remember her name. She was in the Venom movie, I think. She actually operated as She-Venom for a while. Because comics. And then when she died, Dylan went to live with Eddie's dad, who's abusive. And both Dylan and Eddie believed that Dylan was Eddie's dad's son, therefore Eddie's brother.
Did both of them miss well, I guess Dylan missed the part, but did Eddie miss the part where his wife gave birth?
Eddie didn't know about it. I think they were like already divorced by then or something.
And she sent him to live with her abusive...
I don't remember. This is a storyline from like a couple of years ago. That's not the important part.
Seems pretty important to Dylan.
So Eddie shows up to like finally... So basically Eddie just like shows up to be like, hey dad, you were abusive and we're going to come to a reckoning with that. And his dad's like, hey, guess what, Eddie? Here's your brother. Actually, Eddie, here's your son. Anyways, I'm going to leave now. Take your son with you. And then he's like, okay. It's then revealed that Dylan has a piece of Null inside him and as such can command symbiotes.
How did that happen?
I'm shrugging, audience. I don't know. But then now I'm rubbing my face in frustration because this is when it gets confusing. In the most
not confusing already?
In the most recent issue of King in Black, they're like, oh my god, we've been wrong this whole time. The piece inside of Dylan that lets him control the symbiotes isn't Null. It's from that god of light that beat Null all those millennia ago. Oh my god. Mind's blown. I don't know. Marvel's been very obsessed with Venom in the past couple years. They've done a lot of events that are Venom focused. Because there was...
I'm so excited for Venom to join the MCU.
Fingers crossed, man. But there was Venomverse, which was a very fun take. You know Spider-Verse?
I do.
So it was like that, where it's like, oh, what if there were all these other characters that had the symbiote, and like, how did they get them? And then it was like, oh, and now they all have to go to this dimension as like an army of Venoms to fight these things called poisons that like eat Venoms. And then there was a follow-up to Venomverse, which was Venomized, in which the poisons came to our Earth, our air quotes Earth, the Prime Marvel Universe, Earth 616, and like infected a bunch of people with Venom symbiotes for the sole purpose of then eating them, because the poisons can only eat someone if they're with a symbiote.
It's like Farms.
Yeah, basically. Very, very... I like Venomverse. I just like alternate timeline stories, so I really liked Venomverse. So it was like, what if Rocket Raccoon had a symbiote? What if...
That's adorable.
What if Captain America had a symbiote? Then there was, I think it was called Absolute Carnage, which... Okay. So symbiotes can asexually reproduce. The most famous spawn of the Venom symbiote is Carnage, which was famously bonded to a serial killer named Cletus Cassidy. So Cassidy died, but then through one of like the lead-ups to King in Black was Absolute Carnage, which was like the power of Null resurrected Carnage, and he just went on like a massive murder spree.
Without a person, or did
he was like a skeleton covered in symbiote goo.
Sure.
It's a god of darkness, Kendra. What do you want from me?
Sure.
So that's what's been happening in Marvel Comics, at least in terms of events. In DC, that is a whole other mess. So to talk about what's the current event in DC, we got to go a couple of events back. We got to go back to, and I've been talking about this a lot, or I talked about this a lot before our break. We got to go back to Dark Knight's Death Metal, which was an event that DC had, and the focal point of it was a bunch of like evil. It introduced the concept of the dark multiverse. So we're going to take this in steps, right? So there's the universe, Earth. I think in DC Comics it's referred to Earth Prime or Earth Zero. That's where like all the versions of the superheroes you know and love live, right?
Cool.
Then there's the multiverse, which is Earths 1 through 51, including Earth Zero. So there's 52 Earths in the multiverse.
New 52. Except not the new 52.
DC loves the number 52. I don't know. After Infinite Crisis, which was their big event in the mid-2000s, they had a series called 52, which ran for 52 issues. Then after 52, they had Countdown to Final Crisis, which also ran 52 issues. But it started at 52, and every week it would release like one less. After that, they had the New 52, which was them revamping their multiverse. Also, their multiverse always had 52 worlds. Also, all of the longest-running series from New 52 ran for exactly 52 issues. I don't know why they love that number. 52 weeks in a year? Maybe? I don't know. Anyways, so there's the universe, one step up is the multiverse, but underneath the multiverse is the dark multiverse. The worlds in the dark multiverse, there's countless worlds in the dark multiverse. Those spawn from like the doubts and fears of the residents of the light multiverse.
Oh, I have spawned so many worlds in the dark multiverse then.
Yeah, so basically all it takes, it's like, what's an example? It's like if Batman was like, oh, what if I started killing criminals? Boom, now there's a universe in the dark multiverse named like the Grim Knight, I think is the Batman that hails from there, and he's like Batman plus Punisher.
I'm so obsessed with that concept.
So the Dark Multiverse was the focus for Dark Knight's death metal, and their sort of they had a team of evil Batmen, and like each one was like Batman plus another character from the light multiverse. So like there was Batman plus Doomsday, Batman plus Flash, Batman plus Green Lantern.
What does Batman plus Flash look like? What thought?
I think he's called the Red Death. If you want to look it up, his design is pretty cool.
What thought spawned Batman plus Flash? What doubt or anxiety did Batman or the Flash have to say,
oh,
you know what? I need to merge.
All of the worlds in the multiverse are designated by a number, so like Earth 1, Earth 2. But all the dark multiverse are the same number but negative.
Ooh.
So it's like Earth negative 33. You could just Google image search Red Death DC to get a glimpse of what Batman plus Flash looks like. But the big breakout star of Dark Knight's death metal was the Batman Who Laughs, who was from a dark timeline where Batman kills the Joker.
You lied.
What?
This looks stupid.
I think it looks cool.
You lied to me. This looks ridiculous.
The worst design is the Batman plus Green Lantern. I think it's called Oathbreaker? The Oathbreaker? I'm gonna double check that. Is it Oathbreaker? No.
Oathbreaker's something else.
Dark Knight's Metal. Sorry, Dark Knight's Death Metal is the current one. Is a sequel to Dark Knight's Metal. Dark Knight's Metal is the original. So I need to... Now I don't remember what they're called. So the Red Death is Batman plus Flash. The Murder Machine is Batman plus Cyborg. The Dawnbreaker is Batman plus Green Lantern, and it's the worst design. The Drowned is Batman plus Aquaman. The Merciless is, I think, Batman plus Ares / Wonder Woman. And the Devastator is Batman plus Doomsday.
Does he wear a skirt when he merges with Wonder Woman?
Let's find out. The Merciless DC. I don't remember what his design looks like. Oh, he is wearing a skirt. Kind of. He's from Earth negative 12. Anyways, what I was trying to get around to is that the big breakout... What's that? Kendra's making a face, folks.
You do be looking kind of sexy, though.
What, the Merciless?
Yeah.
Did you look up the Dawnbreaker?
I couldn't get any good pictures.
I just looked up the Dawnbreaker DC and I got the first result. There's a good image of him. He's got like these weird dumb goggles on and he's like really skinny.
Oh, I see it now.
Yeah, so he's from Earth negative 32, and the Dawnbreaker is if Bruce Wayne got a Green Lantern ring, but he was so emo that he managed to hack the Green Lantern ring through pure willpower. So now instead of the Green Lantern ring making things out of light, it makes things out of darkness.
We're gonna move on.
The breakout, I said this like 5 times now. The breakout star of Dark Knight's Metal was the Batman Who Laughs, who's from a dark timeline where Batman killed Joker, but Joker had some like weird Joker gas in his lungs or something, so the Batman slowly turned into the Joker. So that's the Batman Who Laughs. He's got a pretty decent design, I think. Like, fans loved him. He was the leader of the Dark Knights, which was like the name for all of these evil Batmen. So the event ended. Good guys won, as always.
That's terrifying.
So one of the fallout results of Dark Knight's Metal is that what are you laughing at?
It's so scary. I'm trying to find words to describe this without cursing on air.
It's
people who are into tentacle porn would like this.
What? Because of all the chains?
It's just something about it. It's just something about.
He's very spiky.
It's just something about the whole face with a collar of spikes around the eyes.
Yeah. His Robins are called crows, and they're like weird mutated monster children.
Oh, I can get a little thing.
A figurine?
Yes.
Yeah, that one was very popular when it came out, and I think it's a lot of money. You're looking at the one with him with all his crows, right? And all the chains?
Yeah.
Yeah, that one was very, very popular when it came out. Anyways, one of the side effects of Dark Knight's Metal was that the source wall was broken. The source wall is sort of a metaphysical and also physical wall encompassing the multiverse that sort of holds everything together. So when they broke the source wall, they released a being called Perpetua. This is all happening in the aftermath of Dark Knight's Metal in the Justice League series. Perpetua is eventually revealed to be a being, the being that created the multiverse, basically. She comes from a race of beings that create multiverses, and then basically she's got a big survival of the fittest fetish. So she and her race just creates multiverses and then tries to breed the apex predator out of this multiverse. So since she was imprisoned, the multiverse that we know was allowed to actually flourish and turn into the multiverse. But she thinks that the multiverse is diseased and wrong. So her goal is to destroy the multiverse. So she kind of lingered around for a couple of years. And then eventually we got to the event that just wrapped up at the end of December, which was Dark Knight's Death Metal, which featured the Batman Who Laughs teaming up with Perpetua and actually rewriting the multiverse in their image. Over the course of Dark Knight's Death Metal, the Batman Who Laughs ends up killing Perpetua and taking her power and ascending to her level of status. And Perpetua's whole goal while she's been around was to restart the multiverse and get her apex predators back, because she knows that her brothers and sisters were coming, and she thought that they were going to deem the multiverse unworthy and destroy it. So she's like, hey, if I kill everyone and then get my funny little apex predators back, they won't do that. So then the Batman Who Laughs gets her power.
Siblings awful.
And he's like, that's a nice plan, honey, sweetie, sweet cakes. But what if instead I took your power and killed all your brothers and sisters and let the nightmares reign? Wouldn't that be funny? So that's his plan. And then Wonder Woman ends up ascending to that level of power also. And she's like, hey, what if instead I beat you up? So then Goddess Wonder Woman and God Batman Who Laughs fight in the skies while it's a really weird thing, because literally all of the heroes and villains, literally all of the heroes and all of the villains of the DC universe are fighting side by side against the nightmares from the Dark Multiverse. And yeah, I can see maybe Lex Luthor doing something like that, but it's weird to see the villains that have a super intense hatred for some of these people they're fighting alongside to be doing this. And
it's only fun to destroy the universe when you're the one doing it.
Yeah, and I get what are we how are we gonna rob a bank if there's no banks around? But when you see Joker fighting alongside Batman and Robin, something just feels wrong.
Oh yeah, then it makes it seem cheap.
Yeah.
You hate each other. You
can't
turn this into a buddy comedy.
It kind of helped that Batman was dead and had a Black Lantern ring and could therefore resurrect anyone else who was dead to fight for him. So that's how they kind of excused some of it.
And Joker was just dude, that's sick.
Joker may have been one of the undead. I don't remember. It's a
dude, that's sick.
A lot of these events in the last 2 or 3 issues just become incomprehensible messes. You're just all right, I'm just going along with this ride. Final Crisis, which we didn't even really talk about when we were going through our crises list a couple episodes ago. Final Crisis is such a mess. It's another Grant Morrison work, who did All-Star Superman, which was our last episodes. Final Crisis is truly, truly incomprehensible. And that's coming from me, the guy who comprehends almost every comic book. Final Crisis is a mess. And if you think otherwise, I'd love to hear your opinion. You can email us. No, I'll say that for the episode. Anyways, so
Matt's gonna come and find you and fight you.
Drop your address. No, don't do that. So the final issue of Dark Knight's Death Metal, which came out in December, Wonder Woman destroyed the Batman Who Laughed and came face to face with Perpetua's siblings. And she was like, hey, isn't our universe kind of dope, though? And they're like, yeah, I guess you're right. Hey, you want to come hang with us? And she's like, yeah, okay. So then she just kind of ascends and leaves this plane of existence.
Yes, queen.
In the aftermath of death metal, it's sort of... So here's where we get into how they're trying... What I believe what they're trying to do is salvage what's happening behind the scenes. So before we get into the aftermath of death metal, let's talk for a bit about what's been happening behind the scenes. DC's, I think, editor-in-chief was a man named Dan Didio. I think that's how to pronounce his last name. I'm not sure. And he had very big, fairly public plans to have an event called Generations, which was going to make a lot of big changes in DC. The most sort of famous of which was he was going to make Batman a black man. Naturally, when that sort of was teased to the public, that got a lot of attention. Because comic fans don't like changes. Especially when... I
really thought you were going to say comic fans don't like black people.
I was going to get to that. I was going to say comic fans don't like changes, especially when that changes changing a character that's primarily a white man to something that's not a white man. See all of the changes Marvel did and then had to undo. So Dan Didio ended up being fired, which kind of put his plans in the dirt. But because of the nature of the comic book industry, a lot was still written and drawn and just generally produced for Generations. So it was kind of too late to just ditch all of that. So, and again, this is all conjecture from what I have seen and what I think is happening. What I think happened, and this is somewhat backed up by the in-comic events, I think that the current DC event, which is Future State, which is a bunch of miniseries that take place anywhere from 5 years into the future to like at the end of time. I think that what's happening in Future State is what DC had left over from their work on Generations. Now here's why. Because the big thing that they're using to promote Future State is that they have the Black Batman stories. I think it's called The Next Batman is the series that is the stories. It's the stories that we were hearing about for a while. So that's why I think Future State is sort of the leftovers of Generations. So what they did, how they expressed that in universe, is part of the aftermath of death metal is that Earth Prime, which has been the Earth that most stories are written from since Flashpoint, is no longer the center of the multiverse. So what that means in universe is now they have a lot more freedom to like get all wacky and wonky with timeline stuff and alternate universe stories and whatever, which I'm excited for because I love Elseworld stories. I love alternate timeline stories. So yeah, I would say that Future State is an interesting thing to look at. There's only been Future State only started coming out like midway through January, so we're not super deep into it yet. But what's sort of frustrating...
This January?
Yeah. Future State is currently going on.
New.
Yeah. It's not permanent. They're going to go, once Future State is done, they're going to go back to the timeline that we know.
Normal stuff, yeah.
Yeah, again, I think this is just them publishing what they had left over from Generations so that they can use that time gap to get back on track with their publishing schedule. The one permanent thing that we know is coming out of Future State is that there is a new Wonder Woman. Her name is Yara Flor, and she is Brazilian.
Hot.
Sorry?
Hot.
Yeah. I mean, get it? She's an Amazon because she's from the Amazon jungle.
Lame, but hot.
Her story, I think she's had 2 issues of her Future State series come out. It's very interesting because it's Wonder Woman is very deeply rooted in Greek myth, but the Yara Flor stories, at least the 2 issues that have come out, she is interacting with both entities from Greek myth and entities from local Brazilian myth, which is a really interesting hybrid. Because first of all, it's not often that you see 2 mythologies being mixed together. 2, it's rare to just see Brazilian mythology represented at all. And we know that Yara Flor is going to be the permanent Wonder Woman moving forward, at least for a little bit, because I have...
Is Wonder Woman just staying ascended?
Yeah, for now. Again, comic books hate status quo. Again, comic books hate changing the status quo. So I'm sure in a couple of years we're going to see Wonder Woman come back as a white lady.
But for now, she just said, "Screw this universe."
Basically, it was more kind-hearted than that. Speaking of the status quo, here's something I want to talk about. I'm drinking water. Dear listeners, if you are regular listeners, you'll know that a couple episodes ago, I don't know if I ever talked about this on air. Did we talk about Damian Wayne? Yes, we did. On our Robin episode, we talked about Damian Wayne leaving the role of Robin.
Yes.
And I said on the record...
I was very excited about that.
I said on the record, like, oh, he's going to come back to Robin. I give it a year, tops. It was less than that. They've already announced that he's coming back to Robin. Do you want to know how many issues Damian Wayne has appeared in where he wasn't Robin? 3. Maybe even 2. Because he, in the most recent Teen Titans annual, he had a big hissy fit. Well, it was more emotional than that. But he had I don't know, he's a child, so I want to say temper tantrum. He and Batman had a fight and ended up dramatically ripping the R off his chest and storming off. And then a couple months later, not even a couple months, a month or 2 later, he reappeared in a sleek gray outfit and he's like, "I'm going to solve my father's unsolved crimes because I'm Batman's son." Ooh. And then a couple of weeks ago, DC was like, "Hey guys, Damian's coming back as Robin. Haha, isn't that funny? Isn't it cool how we don't change anything?" Man, that bums me out. Because without Damian, they had put Tim Drake back in the Robin mantle, which he's my favorite Robin, so I was very happy about that. They did it in the weirdest way too, and I might have said this on air already, but Tim Drake has been active in Young Justice, and literally how they did it, it wasn't even like he had some interaction with Damian or Batman showed up. It was really towards the end of that issue of Young Justice, he receives a phone call from Batman, and you just see his side of the conversation and be like, "Hello? Uh-huh. Yeah, I'll be Robin again. Okay, bye." And then that's it. And then he's Robin. I mean, it's better.
You're up, Tim Drake.
It's better than his last code name, which was just Drake, and had the ugliest outfit in existence.
I thought your favorite was Nightwing.
No, Tim Drake as Robin is my favorite Robin. So, each of them, when they operated as Robin.
Okay.
I keep switching between my favorites. On any given day, it could be any of them, except Damian. I don't really like Damian.
Damian sucks.
Yeah, it really does depend on the writer, because sometimes he's written, because he's 10 years old or something.
And 10-year-olds suck. Sometimes
he's written accurately to how a 10-year-old would be, because his whole backstory is that he was artificially raised and was trained to be an assassin since birth. So sometimes he's written as a 10-year-old would be written, and sometimes he's written as an assassin would be written. And it's very inconsistent. When he's written as an assassin, which is most of the time, he's a jerk. Because he's "I'm superior, blah, 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 blah."
Ew. Imagine those words coming out of a 10-year-old's mouth. I would probably punt a 10-year-old.
I mean, his very first appearance, Batman was fighting the League of Assassins, and they get him in a hold, and then Damian walks out of the shadows and puts a sword up to his neck and says, "Hello, father," and he's 10. If you're looking for what I consider the best written Damian Wayne, I would look at James Tynion IV writing on Batman and Robin. I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce his name, but he Tynion, I'm not sure, but he is honestly he might be my favorite current Batman writer, but he's definitely the best at writing interactions between Bruce Wayne and Damian Wayne. He started writing for Batman and Robin. He's currently writing for the Batman line, he's doing the current line. he wrote for Batman and Robin starting in I think like right before New 52, and then like carried on through New 52. I recently just read it all. Like they sell just an omnibus, which is a very thick book of like everything James Tynion has written for Batman and Robin. He also wrote Batman Eternal and Batman and Robin Eternal, which are also very good Batman series. They're just sort of their own little contained stories. He also is responsible, I'm looking at his Wikipedia page, he's also responsible for writing all 3 of the different Batman Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle crossovers.
Sick.
So that's fun. But yeah, I love...
Who wrote the Batman and Scooby-Doo crossover?
Do you mean the one from like the TV show?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
That's what I'm interested in.
Wait, there was a movie in 2018 called Scooby-Doo and Batman the Brave and the Bold? How did I not know that? It's on Amazon Prime?
You're slipping on your comic book knowledge.
I don't really pay attention to like what media comes on. So you're talking about, what you're talking about is Scooby-Doo Meets Batman, which was like released as a DVD. And it contains 2 episodes, The Dynamic Scooby-Doo Affair and The Caped Crusader Caper. So the Dynamic Scooby Affair, this information is coming from Scoobypedia, the Scooby-Doo wiki. I don't know how we got here. This isn't like... I guess it's comic related. Does it even say who wrote it?
Well, there's a comic version.
Yeah, there's been a series called Scooby-Doo Team Up that has been running for a couple years now. I'm going to double check what that omnibus was that I read, because I do want to recommend it. So I want to be accurate in the information I am presenting to our listeners. Just as a sort of reminder, an omnibus is a very large trade paperback, sometimes in hardcover, that usually collects. It either collects like everything that was written by one author during the run on a long-running series, or it collects like multiple different smaller mini-series that are all part of like one overarching story or all about one character. I like just reading through them because that's usually how that's the best way to sort of get a full self-contained story within the ongoing media of comics, is to just read everything that one author has put out for that character.
You say that like it's so easy. Just read everything this one author has put out.
Yeah, right. Oh, shoot. Okay, that's why I couldn't find anything. I'm sorry. I was talking about the wrong author. You know what it is? It's because Tynion is one of my favorite Batman authors, but the other one that I really like is Peter J. Tomasi. So he's the one that wrote Batman and Robin throughout, both right before Flashpoint and then throughout all of New 52, was Peter Tomasi. Tynion or Tynion, I'm really sorry, I don't know how to pronounce his name. They're both really good at writing Batman. I also really like Tomasi's work on Green Lantern, so I'm a big fan of Peter Tomasi. Props to him. Tomasi is one of the men responsible for writing Blackest Night, which was a very big event in the late 2000s.
I'm just thinking, no shade, but this man looks like he writes comic books.
Who, Tomasi?
Yeah.
That's funny. So yes, Batman and Robin by Peter J. Tomasi and Patrick Gleason Omnibus is very long, but very good. It tells a it really does. So here's the thing about Damian Wayne. He didn't become Robin until Bruce Wayne was thought dead. So he didn't actually get to spend any like real quality time with his father. So you don't really get to see, and Bruce didn't come back from the dead until like right before Flashpoint. And then the New 52 happened to reset everything anyways. But Tomasi's run on Batman and Robin and everything associated with it that's collected in this omnibus tells a really nice story of their relationship like being built and them like caring for each other. Because when Damian first shows up, he's like, I am 10 and I was trained by assassins and I'm going to be the best Robin there was. And Bruce is like,
but without
you're
a
brat.
Batman?
Well, when he first showed up, Bruce was still alive, but then he just kind of hung out for a little bit, and then Bruce died, and Dick Grayson became Batman, and then he was like, all right, you're Robin now. Tim, get out of here. And Tim's like, what the heck, man? But I really like Tomasi's run on Batman and Robin. We'll probably cover at least part of it, because I don't think the whole omnibus itself is like a lot to do.
I'm struggling with Watchmen. I don't know if I can get through an omnibus.
Yeah. Speaking of, let's do just a very brief background on Watchmen, because it's really interesting. And the more we get in today, the more we can actually talk about this story itself next week, because whoo boy, is that a lot. So Watchmen was written by Alan Moore. And it's meant to be a how do I call it? Not like a parody, but it's a critique. That's the word I was looking for. It's a critique on superheroes and their morality. Because there was very specifically, actually, this is like sort of very pointed. There was a writer by the name of, why can't I find it in this Wikipedia article? He did a lot for Spider-Man 2, and I can't think of his name at the moment, which frustrates me. Steve Ditko, who we talked about when we did Spider-Man all those months ago. Steve Ditko was well known in the comic book community for his code of ethics, and especially how he put those ethics into his characters. Ditko believed in I don't know if I can't speak to his beliefs, but his characters believed in there being like good or bad, and you're one or the other. No grays, like no mixing, no compromise. You're good or evil. So the point of Watchmen is sort of to point out the flaws in that. And to do that, Moore uses the main character. I don't really want to call him the protagonist, but the main character of Rorschach, who, and this, listeners, if you
like Rorschach,
no, I don't want to. If you think Rorschach is in the right, if you think Rorschach is the hero of the story, if you think Rorschach is a role model or is in any sort of way something to model your life after, you are wrong.
You have read the story so very wrong.
It's not even like, oh, that is your interpretation, blah, blah, blah. You're just wrong. Rorschach was designed to be... He was designed to be the very most extreme case of white-black morality, hence the design of the mask, where it's like white and black not mixing. And it was designed to show like all of the flaws in that, especially with like how it mixes in with toxic masculinity. We'll get into that more when we actually dig into the storyline. Cliffhanger. Stay tuned if you want to know why your opinion on Watchmen is wrong.
Everything you know about Watchmen is wrong.
Fun fact, this is actually a very interesting bit of sort of real life lore about the Watchmen series. So all the characters in Watchmen are new original characters, but they weren't originally. Back in the day, in 1983, DC Comics acquired Charlton Comics, which had a line of its characters, and Alan Moore wanted to use those characters for Watchmen, but DC knew Alan Moore, and they knew that he had a proclivity to like kill and or maim and or severely psychologically damage his characters in his writing. So they were like, we might want to use these characters later that we just paid a lot of money for, so maybe have new ones. So all of the characters in Watchmen are based off of Charlton Comics characters. So Ozymandias, aka Adrian Veidt, who's like the super genius, is based off of a character called Peter Cannon, Thunderbolt. Dan Dreberg, aka Night Owl, is based off of Blue Beetle, the Ted Kord version of the Blue Beetle. So like a tech genius that like goes around flies around on like a round ship and is animal themed. The comedian is based off of Peacemaker, who was recently announced to be played by John Cena in the upcoming Suicide Squad movie. So, you know, a serious dude with guns and whatever. Dr. Manhattan is based off of Captain Atom, a nuclear-powered hero, god-tier power, quantum physics, etc., etc. Silk Spectre is actually not... She was originally based off of the Charlton character Nightshade, but more also brought in a lot of elements of characters like Black Canary and Phantom Lady from like normal DC Comics. And then, of course, Rorschach is based off of both Steve Ditko's character, Mr. A, who was the most extreme of Ditko's character when it came to black and white morality, and the Charlton character, The Question, who's like dude with a faceless mask and a trench coat and hat, and he beats up dudes with his bare fist. So
cool.
It's really, like, once you know that, it's really sort of obvious to see, and it's really interesting to, like, have that awareness of, like, oh, this element of the character is based off of this element from the other character. Yeah. It also just really it makes for better comparisons, and therefore increases the quality of the critique, like how in the Amazon original series The Boys, which is based off of the comic series The Boys, their like kind of jerky evil superhero team, they're all just Justice League analogs. Having your critique or your parody or whatever you want to call it, having them based off of, like, directly based off of the characters you want to critique on makes it a lot easier for the audience to put it together what your message is. I'm going to be using a lot of big words like that for Watchmen because it's that kind of thing. So yeah, join us next week for what will probably be part 1 of our Watchmen talk.
Oh my god.
If you want to, if you have any questions, comments, suggestions, literally anything you want to say to us, and like you want to be on air or like have any topic for discussion, you can tweet us or just follow us on Twitter at CBBCPod. That's at CBBCPOD, or you can email us at cbbcpod@gmail.com. I have been your host, Matt Lasik.
I've been your co-host, Kendra Forte.
And until next week, Excelsior!